Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're excited to share some great information with you today on partner onboarding and logistics. We have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Chris Tassoni. Change slide, Brent.
Yeah, hold on.
And I am your host, and I'll be introducing our speaker, Brent, in just a minute. And as some background on who we are, for those of you who don't know SEEBURGER, we are an independently owned software and services company founded in 1986. We're headquartered in Bretten, Germany, and we have 17 global subsidiaries, including 2 locations in the US. We have 1,200 employees and 14,000 customers worldwide across more than 20 industries. We have one platform that covers all types of integration across the business, and we have 20 years of experience in the cloud. We provide global support, consulting, and training for our software and services. And also, as a quick side note, SEEBURGER is often recognized by analysts. In fact, we were just named a major player for B2B middleware by IDC in the 2024 MarketScape Vendor Assessment. So, next slide, please. Today, we will be covering multiple aspects of onboarding, getting to the source of common challenges experienced by logistics companies. We'll talk about 2 types of onboarding, strategic and operational, and the legacy approach still used by so many companies today. And next, we'll explore the key requirements for overcoming onboarding challenges and how our solutions effectively meet those needs. And then finally, we'll answer a few questions and wrap things up. So now, next slide. Allow me to introduce our speaker, Brent Tisdale. With more than 30 years of leadership experience in customer-focused sales and sales management, Brent brings a wealth of expertise and experience in achievement in digital transformation, logistics, supply chain, manufacturing, and omnichannel projects. Drawing upon 6 Sigma process improvement skills, a deep understanding of various industries, and his diverse technology background, Brent brings consistent, measurable business results for his customers. Here is Brent Tisdale.
All right. Thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone. I appreciate the fact that you're going to spend a little time with me. I know my title says VP of Sales, but I do focus on business processes. I like to make sure I understand business processes and like to solve them where we best can optimize the flow and optimize the overall process so that companies can achieve improved business outcomes. So don't let that title sales scare you a little bit. I like to really focus on solving business problems, and that's my background. Now, the impetus behind this entire session came from my time with some conferences, specifically logistics conferences this year, Manifest and Breakbulk. From that experience, I had some conversations with quite a few stakeholders who asked questions around connectivity, but more so questions around how can they onboard partners. And so I would ask the question, well, what is your challenge around that? And the answer was typically, well, we have manual processes and they're not working as well. So my next question was, well, tell me if you could, where's the impact? What's the concern here? And the usual response was, oh, management's not too happy about it. So I thought maybe we need to bring the idea of onboarding to the logistics space and anyone else on the phone who's in manufacturing or retail or wherever, that onboarding is strategic versus just operational. And that's the entire flow of this particular presentation. But now I'm going to kind of focus on this particular section, which is partners. Partnerships, mergers, and acquisitions. And why am I focusing on this is simply for the simple fact that what tends to happen in this space, let me get my pointer here, is that in the logistics space, there's a lot of consolidation taking place. If you go pre-2000 or COVID, I should say, and then post-COVID, there's a lot of growth, a lot of demand, a lot of supply, but there's consolidation shaping the landscape. And so what you're seeing happening is a lot of partnering, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And what companies are looking to do in these mergers and acquisitions and partnering is drive their capabilities and drive their capacities. That's what the entire business objective is. So let me quickly define, in case you're wondering, what do I mean by capabilities? Capabilities for logistics partners or anyone outside of logistics could be a couple of things. One is many want to grab new markets. Access to new markets is critical for growth. That's one. Cross-border logistics, basically saying what you're seeing now and what I'm seeing and shaping in the landscape is that a lot of logistics companies are considering getting close to the Mexico border. That's because tariffs are taking place. And the question becomes, where will the flow of demand come from? And it looks like a lot of flow will come from the south. And so there's a lot of movement shaping up in that specific space. There's a reason that some companies, logistics companies, are looking for green solutions. So what I mean by that, they're looking, for example, eco-friendly warehousing, where the warehouse owner or company are providing abilities to use low energy footprint in terms of lighting, air conditioning, and heating, because perhaps the company, let's say partner A is the person who's the partner and partner B is the person being acquired or merged. Some use those two terms, partner A, partner B. Perhaps partner A has a lot of customers who say, hey, we want to work with companies that are more green from a logistics standpoint. So a merger may take place looking for maybe a warehouse that can address that specific need. And of course, there's always the oversized play, whereas there's a need to increase the capabilities of reaching into a new region, but you need more flatbed trucks to achieve that. And so you see the shaping of the industry that brings about these types of drivers from a business goal perspective. And then you have capacities, forgive me. So the capacities really get into how can I increase my storage? How can I increase my fleet size? How can I get global reach? And I ran into quite a few companies that at Manifest that were trying to move from Europe into the US and partner with specific logistics companies in the US. So you see this reach taking place, then also driving for higher volumes. So the point becomes, what does this all mean? What it means that the real partnership and the merger and acquisition has a purpose. And the purpose is to drive more business and also protect existing customers. But the most critical part of this is the idea that these companies want these mergers to happen as quickly as possible. Now you may ask yourself the question, why? And why can be shaped by one thing. The competitors watching these acquisitions taking place and perhaps looking at them being cannibalized by a new competitor will respond. So as fast as these acquisitions, mergers, or partnerships can take place, it's better for that company A, so to speak, to make it happen versus major delays, which can cause problems. Now, there have been some tripwires historically that have been public over a period of time where integrations didn't take place. Let me mention this specific one, which is Deutsche Post and DHL. They attempted back in 2000 to bring together an acquisition here. They wanted to be a logistics powerhouse. And it just so happens they had a tripwire. Here again is the integration of their disparate systems across multiple countries became a problem. Now, I cannot say that EDI was part of that problem, but I can say there was a multitude of integration plays there, perhaps EDI as well, that led to the slowdown of that particular project. Now, you can see that the project did succeed. However, it took much longer time and more costs to make it succeed. And that's, I'm sure, was not the reasoning behind the actual acquisition when it started. Second one, in 2016, FedEx wanted to reach out to T&T Express because FedEx wanted to reach into Europe. There's a tripwire here again, IT integration challenges. I can't speak to was EDI part of that. More than likely, it could have been part of it. I've got some reasons as I go down this presentation. The outcome, long delays. Here again, these companies are not looking to stretch out these acquisitions and take too long to achieve this specific goal, which is increasing capabilities or the capacities. But it is because it's critical to their business growth that these acquisitions take place. So there seems to be a theme here that I'm seeing with regards to the speed of making sure that these integrations can take place. But I'm going to be focusing on the EDI part of that integration environment. So let's take a look at this. You probably have not really thought about onboarding from a strategic or operational perspective. Some of you may have, some of you may be considering it. But what I'm going to do is kind of bring some definition into this specific environment and this specific topic. You know, you have to ask yourself, is your onboarding strategic or is it operational? In most cases, it's going to be operational, all right? So let's take a look at the definition of strategic onboarding. And I've had some customers talk to me about strategic onboarding, and some have said we do strategic onboarding, and others say, well, we're not really sure what it is, but let's think about it. And I've done some onboardings, I've written some papers on this topic. The first one is the strategic onboarding has a long-term goal perspective, which is what I talked about earlier, the business strategy. We're trying to increase our footprint, we're trying to cross a global border, we're trying to give ourselves a better position with more services. That's what we're trying to do as a company, because we're trying to capture more market. And that's what it's all about in terms of these partnerships, mergers, and acquisitions. Typically, the whole idea behind it is the scope. The scope is, and this is a critical part, what's in scope? The key point here is that the partner must have the capabilities of being able to fulfill that specific business goal, and also the understanding of the expectation. But I think more importantly, internally, everyone in the organization involved in this acquisition has to understand what was the business strategy behind the partnership, behind the merger, behind the acquisition. This is a critical important point. Now, next, the people involved typically can be the leadership team, those involved in the high-level discussions and negotiations for the partnership and merger and acquisition. One can say the paperwork looks great, but it's got to be operationalized. How do we make this work? So you bring in some high-level IT architects or someone at that level to really have to peel back the onion when you look at the partner being acquired or the partner being acquired or merged or just a partnership, to figure out, can we connect? Because you saw on the other side, there are tripwires. We have to avoid the tripwires or be aware of the tripwires. Now, there may be some people on the phone here saying, well, Brent, yeah, that sounds good, but you don't know everything. You're right. Don't know everything, meaning that when I, as a partner, want to acquire another company, I'm not sure I can peel back the onion deep enough to understand what that other partner has. And there's many reasons behind that. It could be the partner has a new system, the partner has a system that's been in place for a long time, and they have new employees and not familiar with the processes and all the details. There's some truth to that. The idea is that we need to gather as much of that as we possibly can. And if there's a vehicle to do it, we're going to do it. Typically, the underlying issue behind it becomes the fact that it's manual. The manual process can be the culprit behind why we can't peel back the onion and learn more about what is happening with that partner being acquired. Something to think about. Now, the time frame, this is something that you have to look at. The time frame for that strategic onboarding is really about the market growth that that company wants to measure. Sure, they want the contracted time frame from an operational standpoint, but now they want to see, did we achieve our growth with this partnership? And that is based on what? Did we complete the partner integration? If you go back to the Fed Express, the Deutsche example, they did not complete the partner integration in a timely manner. So if they went back and looked at their time frame, they saw that that market growth did not happen within a reasonable time frame. And in fact, that market growth probably got impacted because it took so long, and the competitors in those spaces decided to block off that partnership's market so that they can't get in that marketplace as quickly and grow as quickly as they'd like to. So timing is critically important. Now, the onboarding process from an operational standpoint, we all know this part, right? The operational side of it. Let me move my pointer. This is pretty much focused on the technical execution. But keep in mind, I will go back here. It's making sure that everyone in the organization understands strategically what this partnership is all about, so that the technical execution is aligned correctly. Because if onboarding has been taking place manually, and people have been doing it for years, and you get the statement, well, we've done it this way all the time, probably without an eye towards what that strategic goal was. That can be somewhat problematic. The next scope, the scope typically from an EDI perspective are all the things you guys already know, from the data format, security protocol, standards, validations, it goes on and on and on. You really want to know what's all about from a standpoint of the person that you're about to onboard. What does that look like, so you can make sure that you're prepared to address that, so you can make sure that you can expedite this onboarding process. The typical people involved and usual suspects. operation management, EDI, IT teams, those people who are doing that, the day-to-day execution and how to operationalize this partnership or acquisition or merger. That's kind of typical. Time frame. This is the ultimate goal. The time frame has to be a short period. It's got to be project-based. Let's get it done. And typically, I'll get on the next slides demonstrating that it's done manually or partially manually. It can be a longer time for the onboarding project to take shape and take hold. And the results that they're looking for, we made the connections, EDI connections, the systems are integrated, and the transactions are flowing. So if we can blend, and the goal here, blend the two. Let's not keep them mutually exclusive. Let's see if we can blend them so that operational strategic onboarding, the communication about the strategic onboarding is understood by the teams doing the onboarding and also the partner who's being involved in the onboarding. Then there's better alignment, and that's where we want to get to at this point in time. Now, strategic and operational onboarding has challenges, and I think onboarding itself has some challenges, right? And the key thing is this. If you look at partner company A, let me say again, company A today, they're operating efficiently, right? The flow of documents, and I'm not going to get on the different details because we have different businesses here, but if you're a manufacturer, you have purchase to pay, and so you have your outbound 850s, then flows back, purchase order changes, you have ASNs, you have invoices, etc. A lot of flowing going back. If you're on the logistics side, you have, on one side it can be orders, and the other side load tenders, etc. So no one wants to interrupt that flow because it's critically important to keep operations flowing and keeping customers happy. But when you get into the onboarding process, there's challenges. So you look at company B being onboarded, and there's the challenges tend to arise. You have different systems, homegrown systems that exist, legacy systems, third-party systems, different protocols, right? The company B may not know anything about APIs or may not know anything about AS2. And that just creates a problem for you, because if someone is being onboarded and they need to learn about AS2s, there's some training, there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot of certifications and testing involved. And so that becomes a challenge if it wasn't known that they didn't have AS2 in their portfolio. Then you have such things as limited standards. In some cases, maybe everyone's doing Edifact, X12, etc., but they may have different versions. And that can be a slight challenge for you from a versioning perspective. Then, of course, you have, inconsistent formats. One of the key ones is unit of measure. So let's say a large middle mile company wants to get into the flatbed industry and use large bulky shipments. Well, the bulky shipments, their unit of measure is based on tonnage. And so now you have to learn, how do I get my systems to react in a way that it incorporates tonnage into the unit of measure. Unit of measures can always be a big challenge, but also when you think about unit of measure, typically during the validation process, most companies will only validate on the EDI fields. They tend to not look inside the envelope too deep in terms of looking at unit of measure, but they wait until after the validation of EDI happens. And what do? They say, oh, the partner is now validated, and now the partner is exchanging documents into production, but now you get failures because unit of measure is inconsistent with what was required. Those are edits in the back end. So the idea is perhaps you move those edits a little bit further out during the testing phase and not wait in production to look at what may fail and what may go through. So these are some of the things you have to consider when you're doing the onboarding process, because you want to minimize failures in production. There's also the challenge of the EDI staff. Most organizations will have 2, maybe 3, sometimes as high as 5, depending upon the size and the focus of their EDI staff. Now, keep in mind, I've been in the business a long time, and there's a lot of retirements that are taking place. So staffing is getting a little shorter, and so that limited staff is really key, because when many companies look over the horizon, they can see staff retirements taking place. So it will make onboarding a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult. The last but not least are the silos. Now, yes, I'm leaning towards logistics. What a company A has to understand is if company B's back-end applications are integrated, And it may come as a surprise in many cases, some of these back-end logistics applications are not integrated. So if a load tender is sent to a TMS and the TMS is not connected to the WMS, right, to let the warehouse team know that there's a large load coming in at a certain time, that's a problem. And that's what we call cross-system integration. Now, it's important that during that expectation part that I say strategic onboarding is about communicating the expectations, partner or company C will have to know that you're going to test them on cross system or application integration so that they're prepared to explain either we can handle the integration or no, our systems are not integrated yet. And that's another challenge that has to be addressed. So these are some of the challenges that take shape and take hold when the surprises may happen, but you really want to uncover these surprises early on. Now, the legacy approach to onboarding has been around for a long time. I've been in this business and the information technology business for 40 years. I've been with EDI for about 20 of these years. And there's maybe a third of the companies are automated, doing well across many industries. Some are in the middle, maybe, and some are still getting their arms around the onboarding process, and it's for various reasons. But let's take a look at the onboarding as it's done today. It's typically, in many cases, like maybe a third, roughly, typically manual. And why is it still manual? There's many reasons and good reasons. But now modernization is coming around the corner. And now people are saying, well, it's maybe time to automate this entire process. What's used in the manual onboarding process is emails, attachments, and phone calls. Now, it's applied throughout the entire flow of the onboarding process. You have to outreach to your partners, begin that communication, determine all the contacts you need, start sharing documents and start understanding the landscape of what you're looking into and pull that back. Now, the challenge is here again, you're sending the attachments or spreadsheets, right? You're exchanging spreadsheets. Now, when you're exchanging spreadsheets, you're compiling all the spreadsheets and trying to keep up with what you're going to face during this integration project. And then you begin the testing. And the testing becomes your continuous loop process where you're having a lot of touch points. Now, remember, we have limited staffs now. And the staffing is really critical because staffs have to handle the day-to-day work. Now, on top of this, they have to handle the onboarding project as well. And when you have continuous loops around the testing process, because as phone calls are taking place or emails are taking place, it can cause a major delay. Now, what does that delay look like? Now, there's a lapse time, and I'll use my hands here. A lapse time, if you can see them, lapse time is here. But the truth is applied time is probably 20% of that elapsed time. Let me give you an example. We have a retail customer of ours that used to take upwards to about 65 days to onboard one partner. And this particular retail customer, as you well know, retail customers do not manufacture anything, they buy everything. So therefore, logically, it's clear to understand that they have a wide number of suppliers that they bring on permanently and sometimes seasonally. So they automated the entire process from manual to automated, and they brought that number down from 65 to less than 5 days per partner. So it goes to show you, elapsed time and applied time can be totally different once you apply that automated onboarding. Now, what are the drivers here? And I kind of touched base on this with regards to onboarding. When you're doing it manually, you're going to have limited scalability. Now, maybe in a logistics company, you may do one partner. Maybe the scale is not a big issue, but if you're doing a multitude of acquisitions, mergers, and partnering, limitations are there. If you're a manufacturer and you have a lot of suppliers, you're going to have limitations because you have what? You have limited staff. Now, staff here again, think about the staff of a company going through the onboarding. Even if you're a manufacturer, you have suppliers that need to do onboarding with you, but suppliers have 5 other companies are asking them to do onboarding. If you're a logistics company and you have company C that you're partnering with, but they have their customers are saying, hey, listen, we're changing some transactions, we're doing this. You need to handle us first before you work on anything from a partnering perspective. So you see, there's a lot of push and pull here, which makes it kind of difficult for everyone to get involved in a streamlined process of onboarding. Then, of course, when there's the spreadsheets, as I mentioned earlier, that are flowing around left and right, it becomes somewhat of a problem because there's human error will be introduced all the time. 11% of the time is the average that human errors will happen. When human errors happen, what do you have? Rework, 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 and errors and rework. And that's not even during testing yet. You're just trying to get the information necessary to test. So you're going through this iteration of rework over and over again. That leads to what? It leads to this point here, the elapsed time. The elapsed time is too long. And as witnessed before earlier, when I talked about FedEx and TNT, here again, you can just imagine if you have this stretch of time that's going by and it just gets complicated by the complications of overseas integration, you can just imagine it will take a long time for that strategic onboarding component to take place, which is the business strategy that was at hand. And at the end of the day, suboptimal outcomes, which means upper management would start to look at this saying, hey, the goal of this partnership is in jeopardy because we're not able to make this connection happen in a reasonable amount of time. So how do we solve that? Well, you have to look at a couple of things. In a perfect world, you sit back and you say, what are the key requirements, ideally, that would help me solve this particular set of issues? So, generically speaking, what are some of the key requirements? Well, would it be ideal to have a digital survey of partners? That is, I can send these partners out a survey from a digital standpoint and get rid of the spreadsheet, number one. Number two, I can have my stakeholders, architects, operations, EDI, any stakeholders involved in this partnership to make the strategic partnership work, put some questions in that survey. So we make sure we cover all the bases as much as we possibly can. That's an ideal requirement. Let's say when I collect all the information, if I have it in spreadsheets can be a multitude of folders and no one understands and can go to the right folder at any point in time because the naming conventions were not correct. But if I can collect it at one central location, would that be helpful to streamline the entire process? How about this? If I'm onboarding different partners, if I decided to get into last mile, that's different versus specialty, large bulk, that's different. Or if I want to get into reaching out to a 3PL partner or a freight forwarder partner, well, they're all different. So I need to have custom onboarding assets that I can reuse over and over again based on who I'm going to onboard. So I'm not starting from scratch every single time. I have a standard frame of reference on how to onboard any number of partners at any point in time. Monitor business activity. This is a critical part. Ideally, would it make sense that you reduce your EDI staff's need to have touch points, phone calls, emails, repetitive emails over and over again for such small things, such as, well, we sent out an invite for this partner to come on board, but they didn't come on board. And that becomes problematic. And so the point becomes, what do we do about that? How do we handle that? And so the point becomes, how can we find a way to monitor and just get a monitoring of what is taking shape or what is unfolding with regards to activities, and just have a dashboard to watch that as it unfolds. And then perform, comprehensive data validation. As I mentioned earlier, understand exactly what's happening from a standpoint of, do they have the right versions? Do they have the ability for cross-system validation, right? Can I validate specific edits that I usually find common errors like unit of measures? That would be great to be able to handle and do. And what is your partner looking for? Well, your partner is looking for, well, we want to be able to onboard, any point in time, 24/7, 365. Let's say there's a person on the partner's team who's being partnered, doesn't take holidays, doesn't take time off, but says, this is a great time for me to late night to do some testing. Well, that flexibility is there. If there's onboarding there, that's 24/7, 365. Then most importantly, that partner says, listen, I don't want to get on the phone or keep sending emails back to company A because I don't understand what errors I'm encountering. Is there a way you can provide me with report and guidance and clear resolutions to these errors that I can say, oh, this is what they're requiring, I missed that, and get it solved without having that touch point again that goes back to specifically those particular requests that are coming in and the testing that's taking place that's having some slight errors. Then how about this? Sometimes there's a shift on who's working with whom, meaning that the partner is retiring, a new person's coming in. Well, there's got to be an update. We've got to update back to the existing partner to understand exactly what is taking place. Let's send his information back to, the partner who's doing it, company A, let's say, and say, hey, we've got a new person joining, and it goes into a centralized location, and everyone's happy because now when questions are asked, we know who to talk to now and not scramble around trying to find out who to reconnect to, because the business information, the master data, is now gone. And then, of course, when that partner's ruling is ready to move to production because they passed all the tests, now that partner says, that would be great to know. So I'm out here again, sending out emails, did I pass? Did I pass? Or being on the phone asking, did I pass? When do I go to production? So those are the overview of some generic requirements that will make sense as you move forward. It says, ideally, how can we solve these challenges? And ideally, can these requirements be met? So let me take a look. I think there's some questions unfolding here. I think we're okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now, this particular view is our community management application. This is not a demonstration of how the product actually works. What I'm going to do is use it as a foundation for how we meet these requirements that I just mentioned. Keep in mind, in January, we'll have a detailed demonstration of how the community management application works to allow you to bring together that strategic and operational onboarding goal. And that's the critical part here. So the first part says this. Remember we talked about surveys. Well, with the onboarding application, it gives you the ability to gather information from all the stakeholders to create a survey and then transmit that survey and invitation to that business partner who resides down here. And they respond to that survey, right? That's the critical part. We need the information that goes deep into what the requirements are, that partner needs to understand what the expectations are. You need to understand clearly what that partner's capabilities and capacities are for the onboarding project ahead of time. And once you gather that information, you want a central location for all that, maintaining the master data. Not only the data that you're capturing, but also the changes at the partner location when staffing is changing. All these different changes have to happen versus having this on spreadsheets, which are hard to track at all times and many times. Now, once you finish that, let's do this now. We have onboarding projects that you can create. Here again, I mentioned you may be creating an onboarding project for an eco-friendly 3PL. You may be creating an onboarding project if you're manufacturing for a list of partners who are yet to get onto EDI at this point in time. So you have a series of different projects that you can create, reusable assets that you can then send out for an onboarding invitation to your specific partners. Critical. Now the next part is let's monitor. Just like when you're driving a car, you monitor the gas, you monitor everything by looking at a dashboard without having to have touch points. The same thing with the onboarding. We don't want to monitor when we send out a survey that anyone opened the survey. Let's monitor that. Let's know who opened the survey, who didn't open the survey, who's responding to the survey. And then by exception, engage someone as required. But the system will do an automatic repeat of sending out an email and a reminder that a survey is there. So there's a reduction of touch points there. You don't have to do that touch point anymore. And then the onboarding invitation, say, hey, listen, we want to start your onboarding process. Here again, monitor what is going on with the onboarding process. And then the guy that doesn't take vacations at company B, he can do self-testing or she can do self-testing 24/7, 365. Say, I want to do testing during the holiday season. It's quiet at that point in time. I'm ready to go. And then they can do all the validation testing, cross-system testing that is required to make sure that the integration takes place. And the most important part is get the reports back that identifies where the errors may have taken place so they can get them resolved. without waiting for someone on the other end of the phone to answer the question or to answer an email. And that saves an ample amount of time. And then get the information back saying, hey, guess what? Great job. You're ready for production. Now that's overview of what an automated system can do to eliminate some of the major contributors to the elapsed time. So in summary, here's what I talked about. From a logistics point of view, onboarding is driven by partners and mergers and acquisitions. There's a big reason for them. There are business goals that are trying to be achieved. That is, increase capacities, increase capabilities, critically important. Companies want to maintain smooth operations during this process. Everything worked fine. Well, let's not rock the boat when we start getting into the integration process. And how can we do that? Well, we can do that by making sure everyone's on board with understanding the strategic part of the onboarding. Then we can execute a digital approach to onboarding, right? We want to combine those together to make sure they work hand in hand. And we know that when we are about to go out into the marketplace and acquire or partner or work with suppliers, there's going to be major challenges there. It's going to be something that by default is going to happen. The whole idea is that we move away from the onboarding that's legacy. We look at the requirements that are needed. In many cases, the requirements are mentioned. They're pretty generic or critical requirements that can be met. It's an idealistic world that cannot be met. Our company's based on handling complex business processes. And that's what I would argue that SEEBURGER can meet all the requirements that I mentioned earlier and then some.
And I think that's it. Don't hesitate to reach out to Brent. Can you go back to your name and email address so everybody has it, Brent?
Well, there we go.
Yeah, so feel free to reach out to Brent with any questions. I guess that's all we have.
All right,
Anything else, Brent?
everyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
See you soon.